Write that down for me, Saito. Write that down for me, Saito.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Write That Down. I'm your host, Justin Knipper. I'm editor at FightGameMedia.com, staff writer at F4W Online and WrestlingObserver.com. I am back with my co-host, Japanese wrestling's leading author, leading historian, leading sociologist, leading broadcast journalist, Mr. Fumi Saito. Okay, today is the final episode of our Legacy Showcase on Giant Baba, the fourth part in our series. Today, Fumi and I focused on Giant Baba as a full-on All-Japan promoter, especially in the late 80s, into the early 90s, into the entire decade of the 90s to the end, towards right before he passed away. We also spent time talking about the promotional strategies he employed. We talked about how he and Antonio Inoki, to an extent, how they used sports media, Tokyo Sports and other wrestling magazines. They use those sports press outlets to decide how they're going to book. A lot of pro wrestling that we saw during that time wasn't based on stories and angles that were presented on television. A lot were carried out through the press, through the printed press. That's why Fumi always likes to say how the Japanese wrestling fan base was very reading oriented. We talk a lot about that at the beginning. We also talked about his booking style, Baba's creative decisions to move wrestlers like Genichiro Tenryu up the ladder, Misawa, Kobashi, and we talked about the importance of the timing and Baba's ability to recognize when the right time to pull the trigger is. We talked about the creation of the Triple Crown, and how that needed to be important after the break with NWA. There's a lot to digest in this final episode, so please take your time, enjoy the ride. I can't think of any other English language resource out there that's covered this era of All Japan in such official detail. Official detail, that's what I'm saying. There's nothing that's out there that's quite like it. So once again, let's thank Fumi-san for letting us sit under his learning tree for another few hours. All right, if you haven't subscribed to the Fight Game Media Network free feed already, please do so now. If you're listening on Spotify, or you're listening on Apple, Downcast, Stitcher, wherever you download your shows, please hit the subscribe button in the app, on the app, wherever it is. It does help the show out a ton. It helps Fight Game Media Network out a ton too. All right, just 1 second. 皆さん、こんにちは。日本のリスナーの皆さん、いつも英語で聞いてくださってありがとうございます。日本語でなくて申し訳ありません。じゃあ、もしもよろしかったら、Spotify、Apple、Stitcher、Downcast などのご利用のプラットフォームで Fight Game Media Network をごとうるくるいただけると助かります。ありがとうございます。本当にありがとうございます。Okay, also, I have a book out right now. New Japan Strong Match Guide, Stronger Than All. It documents every episode from the beginning of the show in 2020 until the end this past December 2021. It's available on Kindle now. If you have Kindle Unlimited, the subscription service, you can read it on that if you have that as well. That's that. Next week kicks off our journey into the world of Joshi Pro Wrestling, women's pro wrestling in Japan from the beginning and onwards. Details coming next week. Be on the lookout. Make sure you're subscribed so you get the next episode in your feed as soon as it goes up. Otherwise, enough of me. Let's start the episode, our final episode, on one of the most important figures in Japanese sports history and Showa era history in Japan, the once and future king of the Royal Road, Giant Baba.
Giant Baba, and how he handled the business. And there was some change in philosophy that Giant Baba started opening up All Japan for like newcomers from outside meaning like from different companies, during 90s, like a UWF International's top American, Gary Albright, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
He just as soon as UWFI closed down the shop, that Gary Albright wanted to do, of course, but Gary was signed by All Japan Pro Wrestling. And also right after right around the same time, Baba wanted to hire, to sign, Yoshihiro Takayama,
Mm-hmm.
and traditional pro wrestling style. And Takayama wanted to learn that, and people like Hayabusa from the FMW, Jinsei Shinzaki from Michinoku Pro Wrestling, they were put together as tag team in New Japan Ring. I mean, All Japan Ring. And Hayabusa and Shinzaki came in as tag team, and they participated in the Real World Tag Team Tournament, and also won the Asian Tag Team titles within All Japan, frame. And a lot of so outside talent started coming in, and he allowed the door, to open the door for something new. Anyhow, that difference, let's rewind the tape a little bit, because what's interesting, how both Inoki and Giant Baba as a promoter and producer and top star at the time, they used the media. Yeah, that the baseball magazines, pro wrestling magazine, weekly pro wrestling magazine, and also Nippon sports publications, Gang and Weekly Gang magazines. And more importantly, for those in wrestling business, the Tokyo Sports play a big role, because they come out every afternoon, every day, and you can pick up Tokyo Sports at any train stations and subway station around the country, right?
Mhm.
Were you when you're in Japan, were they still reading Tokyo Sports?
They were selling it. You'd always see it at like a 7-Eleven or Family Mart, but yeah, people
Not on train stations.
Not as much. Not as much. It was
Right.
more of
Okay. Yeah. Today's, culture, I'm talking about 2022, okay? When you get on the trains or subways, nobody's reading that sports paper or the evening edition of the paper, or even the regular magazine for that matter, that nobody's reading physical paper material, right?
only older men.
Everybody, not even that. The older
Not even
people are,
today, yeah.
not today. The older people are looking at their iPhone or tabloid, or you call it the tablet, or what's popular here, Android, a smartphone in general. They are looking through phone instead of holding a newspaper or evening paper. And the argument can be made that is Tokyo Sports really newspaper, or that they look like newspaper, but it's basically tabloid magazine. You know what I'm saying? Like the New York Post or something,
Exactly. And
Yeah.
you'd often see the wrestling, well, more these days, if you do see it, it's usually towards the back pages.
Right. And in 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way to 90s, that Tokyo Sports was like a pro wrestling newspaper, that comes out every day, every evening. And I think that wrestling company had this mentality that they're like the daily advertising and telling storylines in a newspaper form. And back to this Tokyo Sports, the argument should be made that is it newspaper or is it tabloid looking like newspaper, those papers. And argument is that, yes, they are technically part of a newspaper association, so they should be classified or categorized as newspaper. Then again, Tokyo Sports carry adult content and like a gamble, like horse racing pages in the middle, and a lot of iffy advertising in within the paper, right?
Some sexy content, yeah.
Yeah, adult content in it, and also like a Loch Ness monster and UFOs and whatnot,
Sure. National Enquirer type
of thing. So
conspiracy.
a lot of it, yeah. Or what do you call it? That the unknown creatures,
like old legends or something.
Yeah, or like your Bigfoot or Loch Ness, ETAs or some, and supernatural, you bending your spoon or something, stuff like that.
Sure, telepathy and such, yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of content would appear on Tokyo Sports, so some people never consider that as newspaper.
Sure.
But nonetheless, Tokyo Sports is very popular, okay? And that comes out every afternoon, every day, almost. Well, Sunday they don't come up, but 6 days a week they come out every evening. It has a lot of wrestling in it. on it.
Mhm.
And what's on Tokyo Sports is pretty important for wrestling community. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, it was kind of like instead of TV, like we had over here in the States, people would be reading things like Tokyo Sports and other.
Yeah, the Japanese people are
places like that.
basically more reading oriented, and also Tokyo's news on wrestling news on Tokyo Sports come sometimes before TV.
Right, because Tokyo Sports was daily.
Yeah, then the title, the Giant Baba Hardy Race title match won't be aired until this coming Saturday or something, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so the results on it. There was a couple, like a physical evidence that how Baba used Tokyo Sports back in 1978, June 1st, to be exact. There was Antonio Inoki against Bob Backlund, first meeting. Bob Backlund's WWF title against Inoki's NWF title, double title match. These dudes' first ever meeting at the Nippon Budokan. It sounds like a big match, right?
Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about it a month or two ago.
Yeah. The very same day, Giant Baba, the All Japan Pro Wrestling, was having a house show, but the title match way up in Akita. Like up north, like Akita. I was
very far from Tokyo.
Yeah, but the very same day though, champion Giant Baba against almost underdog challenger Kira Toa Kamata. Okay, Baba decided to drop the belt that night.
I see.
Therefore, the Baba was holding PWF title for over a 5-year period or something, and then all of a sudden that not so big but very surprising challenger Kira Toa Kamata beats Giant Baba to become PWF heavyweight champion way up in Akita. What would Tokyo Sports have to do? You almost have to open a few pages for that news.
Stealing the spotlight.
Very next, sort of. That otherwise, that half the Tokyo Sports coverage was a photo spread of Nippon Budokan, Antonio Inoki against Bob Backlund, double title match, this, that, just filled with that news, right? But by Baba dropping the PWF title that night, the same night, way up in Akita, but you still discovered that you'll have half the space. Interesting, huh?
It really dictated who would be paying attention to what over the weekend.
Yeah, because it was like in 1981, the very big. Oh no, it was, I believe it was 82 then. April, not this Ryogoku Sumo Palace, but Kuramae, the one before that. Okay, April 16, the same day. Okay, Inoki was having this, holding this a big show at the Kuramae Sumo Palace. That the NWA heavyweight title match, champion Inoki against Stan Hansen. Okay, and that was the very last title match of NWF. Inoki defends the title and wins it, and then keep the title. Okay, then relinquish the title, and in order to start the big project called International Wrestling Grand Prix. Now today's IWGP. Anyhow, that relinquish every existing heavyweight title in order to create undisputed that the best in the world, the biggest thing of the in the wrestling world, International Wrestling Grand Prix project that starts. That Stan Hansen relinquished his cowboy hat, and Inoki win the title, defends the title, but he relinquished the NWF title so IWGP project will be created. And the same night, original Satoru Sayama Tiger Mask debuts, beating Dynamite Kid. It's a big show, right?
Very big.
Yeah. Very, very same night in Fukuoka, Baba beats Brody to win the Champion Carnival final. Tokyo Sports has to share just the same amount of pages the very next day. Or, that the Tiger Mask news and Inoki winning the defending NWF title against Stan Hansen, but the relinquish title and then IWGP project starts. That news will be much bigger, huh?
So would this always be coming from All Japan's side or Baba's side? Would they be reacting to New Japan's and Inoki's strategies, or would it be vice versa? Or
It goes
was
both
the
ways
complexion? Yeah,
because
okay.
it goes both ways because the previous year or that year alone, that 81, Inoki's New Japan steals Abdullah the Butcher from All Japan.
Right.
Then following month, okay, Jan Baba steals Tiger Jeet Singh, from New Japan. So
It was a rivalry.
but I think New Japan hit him first. Usually.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? Who starts the fight, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right. So Baba, of course, you're not supposed to notice these things at the time. That Inoki's big show at the Sumo Palace, Inoki against Stance and yeah, of course, But the very same night, way down in Fukuoka, that year's Champion Carnival final being held. And Tokyo and Fukuoka, yeah, it's not really competing in live, audience, crowd, but they're competing in the space of a magazine. And we didn't notice that at the time. Yeah, both companies, both news are on Tokyo Sports, right? And Baba beating Brody while Inoki's beating Stan Hansen. That's what's interesting.
NFL Sunday Ticket is now on YouTube and YouTube TV, which means that it just got easier to be an NFL fan, even if you live far away. Like maybe you like the Bears, but you're hibernating in Panthers territory. But with NFL Sunday Ticket, your out-of-market team is never more than a short distance away. Specifically, the distance from you to your remote control. NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to youtube.com/presale to get $50 off.
Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends 9/19. No refund. Subscription auto renews.
What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
It was almost a race to get to a bigger story. Who's going to have the bigger story for?
And a space in Tokyo Sports the next day, huh?
Right. Yeah. And depending how big the story is, that's how many pages you get. That's how much PR.
So it was not just about sometimes. The reason I'm talking about Tokyo Sports was that it was not always just All Japan against New Japan, Baba against Inoki in coverage, but Baba's people did this on purpose. In November of 1989, when in Maeda's version of UWF at the Tokyo Dome show for the first time and the only time, Cosmos?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
famous
the very big
kickoff show. Yeah.
Yeah, the famous Tokyo Dome. Every single match was like a wrestler against amateur wrestler, or the Russian wrestler, or the kickboxer, or like what you call today MMA, like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Shoot fighting.
And and Maeda's, and Takada, Fujiwara, Yamazaki, everybody was in it that year, and everybody was still together before the breakup to UWFI and Pancras and Fujiwara Gumi and Rings and all these things. This UWF was the second version of UWF, was the core, the most popular one, and they held Tokyo Dome show in November 29th of 1989. The very same night, way up in Sapporo, okay? Way up in Sapporo, All Japan was having this, one of the biggest show, not the biggest, but one of the bigger show during the real tag team championship tournament thing. And Tenryu pins Giant Baba for the first time.
Big news.
There are only 2 Japanese wrestlers who pinned Giant Baba 1-3 in the middle of the ring. Not single match, usually tag team match, but still, Giant Baba wouldn't be pinned. Much like Inoki rarely got pinned, and in modern history, Riki Choshu was about the only Japanese wrestlers who pinned Anthony Inoki, with clothesline 1-3, no interference, no excuse kind of finish. And Riki Choshu was the only one. And Tenryu becomes very first Japanese wrestler to pin Giant Baba 1, 2, 3 with his power bomb. Tag team situations, that it should be Tenryu Ashurahara against Baba and Stan probably. Yeah, or Baba and Dory Funk Jr. probably. Tag team situation. But that was a night Tenryu become very first Japanese wrestler to pin Giant Baba 1, 2, 3. And very next day on Tokyo sports coverage, you have a lot of UWF Tokyo Dome U Cosmos show, but big spread, the turning page. Yes, Tenryu pinning Giant Baba. It has to be big news. So they seem to use Tokyo sports as a vehicle of not just a coverage, but what's important in wrestling, community. Yeah, amount of coverage and so stealing the space within a newspaper. Does that make sense?
By creating the better angle, the bigger program.
Yeah, because they could have done this any other day, right?
Sure.
But they choose to have that day to have Tenryu pinning Giant Baba for the first time and becoming very first Japanese wrestler to pin Giant Baba. Yeah, so it's like they had to make a big deal of that. So a lot of things like this happen, but you would notice it, like you think it was all coincidence. There is no coincidence in wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was well designed, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So Baba was another one that who probably one. Jumbo and Baba was the only two Japanese wrestlers who pinned Brody, at the time, and it was very interesting. The early 80s was where New Japan and Old Japan, therefore Inoki and Giant Baba, competed the most because they were both active in the ring and the promoter, and they were carried by network television. Or they did all the way to 90s, but in a better time slot. In 79, Baba lost the prime time, that April of 79, I remember that the All Japan Pro Wrestling, they changed the time slot from Saturday night 8 o'clock to 5:30 in the afternoon on Saturday. And I was actually like in high school, and it's like Saturday afternoon 5 o'clock, I won't be home. I was saying, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was like and the 1 hour show became a 30-minute show. It's like 5:30 to 6 on Saturday night, I'll never be home. And so that was because TV industry is really, well, of course, cutthroat, but just as soon as this rating, declining or not having big advertiser or any little thing like a TV, like a very TV, value thing that they changed their time slot. You're not good enough to be on prime time and go to Saturday afternoon. It's like, wow, but still on network, but that's hard to get, right? And in 1979, people didn't have VCR yet.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a few decline, and I think the biggest challenge promoter Giant Baba faced was that we talked about this, a couple weeks ago, that Riki Choshu and 15 of his guys migrated from New Japan to Old Japan and worked 85 and 86, if you remember. Yeah. Then spring of 87, all the Riki Choshu's guys again went back to New Japan and made Old Japan crew almost skeleton, you know? And Yoshiaki Yatsu and Killer-kan, well, soon to be retired, but were about the only wrestlers that stayed with Old Japan. What Baba did was to turn Genichiro Tenryu heel for the first time and went up against Jumbo Tsuruta. That created very serious top single match card program. Remember? That and that really elevated Tenryu as a single main event guy too. Because when Jumbo and Tenryu were tag team, Kakuryu, Jumbo Tsuruta and Genichiro Tenryu as a tag team, clearly Jumbo was a guy and Tenryu was number 2, huh?
That's what it
Much
felt
like much like Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki combination decade back. When Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki were tag team together, yeah, clearly Giant Baba was above and Antonio Inoki was number 2 and rather underdog. That made him popular, of course. But kind of same scenario that when Jumbo and Tenryu were together, Jumbo, yes, bigger and bigger and bigger and better, right? But when they turned Tenryu, that really made him in American term, heel, of course. But, Japanese storyline has to be a little bit more realistic, huh? And Tenryu made a statement that the reason he wanted to go against the company and establishment was that the All Japan Wrestling is not popular because of the style. They don't believe you. They don't believe in our style. And that's when he started using the severe Tenryu chop, the backhand, like Ric Flair in Wahoo McDaniels, but he made it into finish. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because his backhand chop, Tenryu chop, is so serious looking that you just can't help but believe it. And also that much like Riki Choshu's statement decade back that when Riki Choshu challenged the company, Inoki and Fujinami, he was, going against company and establishment, like your anti-hero, right? And basically heel, but people love that kind of guy.
Kind of like an
Yeah.
anti-hero.
Anti-hero, yeah. But he changed the style of All Japan Pro Wrestling, and that all of a sudden All Japan Pro Wrestling style is so serious. But what people didn't calculate was that Jumbo is so big and strong that he could stand and take it. You know what I'm saying?
He was tough too. And they all had believable backgrounds too. The sumo, amateur wrestling,
and amateur Olympic wrestling, and also come to think of it, Jumbo, since the rookie year, he was the one, having an important single match against every single American superstars, from the Funks to Jack Briscoe to Race to Billy Robinson to, you name
Funks.
Yeah, right. Jumbo was young and was kind of under Giant Baba's wing at all time, but he, yes, held on his own, and he's tall, strong, big, and just is so. I mean, as a wrestler, a great worker. It's almost so perfect. That was why he wasn't that popular. You know what I mean?
He's too perfect.
I guess so. Yeah, but the Tenryu his partner Tenryu turning on Jumbo and challenging him for a single match, that made Jumbo human too. Does that make sense? Yeah. So these two, Jumbo against Tenryu single match became all of a sudden so interesting. Probably promoter, producer Baba didn't even calculate that far. And Tenryu, the underdog and like a heelish, but the cool guy doing the cool match, not fancy moves, but bunch of slaps and Tenryu chops, backhand chop that you bleed from your chest, and simple power bomb for the finish. You don't need too many moves to convince the audience that this is just devastating, strong type style match. And now that Riki Choshu and his guys are gone, then all of a sudden, wow, they got all kinds of fresh matchups. They divided All Japan Japanese crew into two factions, Tenryu's group and Jumbo's group. Well, traditionally babyface and heels from, if you look at it from America. Yeah. Right. They divided Japanese, All Japan Japanese crew into babyface Japanese and heel Japanese. Yeah, right. But if you present the program in serious manner, yeah, it's not your traditional babyface and heels. It was, but right, Tenryu, this is, and we called it Tenryu Revolution. And it was really believable. Okay. They did they did real, believable things because they changed their, that top and bottom tracksuit into All Japan one and the Tenryu groups one, and they were in a completely different dressing room. They were traveling in completely different buses and hotels. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Made it very believable. Two factions in one company, but they don't travel together. They are not staying in the same hotel, and they are not in the same dressing room. And they were wearing, to be obvious, different color tracksuit, top and bottom. So it's obvious that the which guys in which group. And it was a very interesting time that people almost forgot that the 15 guys in the Choshu's group were gone. But they created a lot, Giant Baba to create that this very fresh, the card and the matchup. And this guy was not the promising prospect at the beginning, tall, but he will be superstar. I'm talking about Kenta Kobashi makes his debut in February of '88 in the middle of this program.
Red tights, red knee pad.
Yeah.
Very young.
Being really tall, and actually, it's hard to believe in hindsight, but he didn't make couple auditions until he made it.
Mm-hmm.
It was Mrs. Baba who read his, bio and high school, your, athletic resumes. He didn't make national championship in any sports or anything like that. And he was right out of, high school. He was the factory worker at the Kyocera, and he was lifting weight. But Mrs. Baba looking at this bio, but this guy has no, the athletic background. Of course, everybody plays some sport in high school, but if you look at Kobashi, you would know. But he didn't make a couple auditions, or he didn't make the resume. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And this 18-year-old Kobashi made a phone call to the office. They wanted to know that why he wasn't even allowed to have the live audition. He flunked on bio paper, and he didn't understand. So he called the office, and somebody told him, "You have no athletic background." And he called, and then so he spent next year lifting weight. He was tall enough, right? Really tall for Japanese, but he was skinny. So he next year, while he was still working, in factory of Kyocera in Kyoto, that he lifted the weight, and he made the weightlifting club in the factory he was working, and went in another audition. And this time that he was called to come into the spot show, we call it, the house shows, like way in the middle of like a small town that they run during the week.
Rec center, no dark lighting.
Something like that. Or big parking lot right next to the shopping mall or something.
Sure. Or next to the pool or something.
Of course. Yeah, anywhere. Yeah. That he was called to come into this show on that day. That little town you've never heard of, right? And that was a test that if we show up, and you don't even know how to get there. This is before Google. You know what I'm saying? Take that train and take bus after the train, and you'll find the town and come to the show, right? But they made him do that. Then Kobashi found the building and showed up at the small house show, spot show, Then just as soon as Giant Baba himself saw him, he signed. Yeah, looking at him as a face, the height, that the body he already had, and just the enthusiasm that they didn't think he'll show up at the smallest town. If he comes in, you'll let him in. You know what I'm saying?
Kobashi had a lot of natural charisma.
Yeah. Underdog kind of charisma. And and grew up in very poor part of town in Kyoto kind of thing. Yeah.
Self-made man.
Oh, pretty much so from the day one. Yeah. And he was made into, Baba's corner guy, carry Baba's, suitcase and go into, Japanese hot tub and wash Baba's back and all these things. Kobashi was doing that.
I don't know if we talked about it too much on our last show, but before Kobashi, Atsushi Onita was that kind of figure for Baba for a while in the 80s.
Yeah, from like a mid-70s into early 80s. But he was a little guy, actually. But
Mhm.
today's standard, Onita isn't all that small because we have a lot of small wrestlers now.
Sure,
But
sure.
in Baba's standard, Onita was so short,
Right.
You talk about Baba, the Jumbo Tsuruta, the old American wrestlers, Tenryu was considered not that tall. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Onita was like, you are, like designed to be a junior heavyweight guy,
Mm.
But Onita, in his mind, that even early days, I'll be main event someday. I mean, that kind of guy,
Mhm.
I'm not going to be in the middle of the card, No, somewhat, somehow, Atsushi Onita will become main event. In Baba's, world, probably wouldn't have happened, huh?
Baba favored the bigger guys. He always liked the bigger, a little stocky, over 6'4", it seemed like.
Sure.
That could also
But
move.
that's what wrestling business was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a heavyweight business at the time, especially back then.
Yeah, definitely. And also, what he saw in America, like 62, 63, 64, all the people he worked, up against, Killer Kowalski, the Bobo Brazil, the Bruno Sammartino, all these huge guys. Yeah. So the wrestling business was for literally larger than life guys, huh?
For giants.
Yeah. And also in late 70s into very early 80s, Onita hurt his both knees. He was forced to retire. I mean, he broke both knees, and that was it for him. Yeah. Right. But it's a legend, it's a myth, but Mr. and Mrs. Baba not having any children, that they were going to adopt Atsushi Onita as their adopted son.
Wow.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. Very. Very much so.
And also, the Dory and Terry Funk were like their family. And even after Onita retired for the first time, that he went on his own to Amarillo to stay with Terry Funk for months. Stay in his house. Probably Baba told him to retire, but in Onita's mind, he was going to make comeback somehow, huh? Some way, and went out to Amarillo, Texas to stay with Terry Funk. Of course, Terry Funk was the one doing that, right? How many times? Well, the first time Terry Funk retired, that was in 1983. Summer of '83 was a huge deal. It made comeback, a couple years later. I mean, couple years later, but Onita did the same thing. How many times Onita have retired?
7? Is it 7 or something like that?
7 or 8. Well, technically he's retired now, but he's working the match now.
Does he still say that he's a volunteer wrestler or something?
I don't know. Those are all comments. Like, it's like, now we know it's all wrestling storyline.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think he's gonna ever retire for real. And as long as the people who wants to see his barbed wire, time bomb, electrified, this and this bomb match, the death match, that he will do it. In fact, he's in the States right now.
That's right. Yeah, he's going to be at one of the WrestleCon or WrestleMania week.
Yeah, and then also have work a match in Texas, I believe. Yeah, because they're a generation, younger than he is, that he wants to touch the legend in the ring physically. That they'll prepare the death match in America, and Onita will fly in and do the your historical death match with you. Yeah,
he's become something, another layer of a cult character, a cult persona over here. It's
sure.
different.
And he's what, 65, 66? Something like that. Yeah. But that's one of those Baba's wrestling children. Not the traditional, authentic one. Nonetheless, Onita still is like a Baba family, I think. And there's, Odo, Kings Road, right? And if there wasn't Kings Road, Odo, there is no Jado, which is Onita. Out of the way,
The evil way, the way off the path.
thesis and the antithesis.
Mm.
Yeah. So doing the complete opposite thing, but I think the Onita wouldn't have existed without Giant Baba's traditional wrestling.
Mm. But
Very
it comes
interesting.
back to that theme that we talked about when we talk about Inoki, when we talk about Baba, the idea of establishment versus anti-establishment. I think that theme
Yeah,
constantly
but those are
appears.
against each other. But what I'm talking about, Onita is still within.
Sure.
Yeah. And what was interesting was that in 1989, PWF, Pacific Wrestling Federation title, International Heavyweight title, UN, United National Heavyweight title, all three single title combined becomes Triple Crown, right? That was April 1989, the very last beginning of Heisei era. Jumbo beats then international champion Jumbo beats then PWF and UN champion Stan Hansen. Therefore, combine a three title in one, and that was the year that only I said April of 1989, right? The Triple Crown was created, and only 2 months later, Tenryu beats Jumbo at Budokan, and it was the first time Tenryu beats Jumbo 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring to be the Triple Crown champion.
Mhm.
It takes a while for Giant Baba's operation to switch titles and to make main event guy. That if you remember, the only crisis the promoter Giant Baba had was that the Tenryu Jumbo program was so strong, like 87, 88, 89. Yeah, very strong 3-year run. Jumbo against Tenryu, or the Jumbo and his guys against Tenryu and his guys, tag team situation. But it was a very strong 3-year program. Then there was, if you remember, Wrestling Summit, the All Japan, New Japan, and WWF, three major company had ran the Tokyo Dome card.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it, right?
Yeah.
It was April of 1990. Yeah, that the main event was Stan Hansen against Hulk Hogan. Giant Baba and Andre the Giant made a tag team for the first time and went up, beat Demolition, and Tenryu had a very historical strong single match against Randy Savage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, such. 2 months after that, Tenryu left All Japan for real, and March of 1990 formed ill-fated, but formed SWS, Super World Sports. That was the very first company that the wrestling company that was owned by a corporate sponsor. That there's a Megane Super at the optical, at the Megane company, that they dump millions in Ichioku, Juoku, that just big budget to create new wrestling company. And Tenryu was recruited to be the top star and a producer. And after that, Tenryu, from All Japan, there's, Isao Takagi, the Yatsu, the Great Kabuki, the Shunji Takano, about 15 guys left from All Japan. It was the first time that the All Japan Pro Wrestling and promoter Giant Baba had not storyline program that crisis, but the wrestlers actually left the company. See, New Japan is like a history of that breaking up and then, forming again and coming back, and all these Maeda's group, the Choshu's group, the this and that. That's not that big of a deal for New Japan because that's how they got bigger. But from the beginning of 1972 all the way to 1990, wrestlers never really left. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that the Japanese wrestler who was under contract with All Japan Pro Wrestling was like almost like what we call a lifer,
Right.
That, yeah, you will be staying with that company. You may not make main event, but if you be, good employee, I should say, and model employee, and being good citizen or whatever, that that if you stay safe, you be safe, kind of company.
Mhm.
That made All Japan Pro Wrestling seem kind of soft from outside too, because nothing's gonna happen. Nobody's gonna really leave this company like Choshu would in New Japan. Like Maeda would, challenging Antonio Inoki within the company. That kind of thing never happens. Yes, Giant Baba Jumbo Tsuruta single match happened a couple times, but the Jumbo never beat him. What's very interesting, remember, I just told you about the night Tenryu pinned Baba with his powerbomb for the first time, 1, 2, 3, that happened. Jumbo Tsuruta, obviously like the number one guy after Giant Baba, right? Jumbo actually never had any single match win over Giant Baba. Interesting. Much like Tatsumi Fujinami never had single match win over Antonio Inoki. It was Choshu. It was Choshu who beat Inoki twice with his clothesline. It's very similar. Jumbo had, opportunity to have a single match in a couple occasions or more. That there were a single match against Giant Baba, but Baba always beat him. Very interesting. But he let Tenryu beat him 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. Although it was a tag team situation, but beating Baba, big deal, right?
Huge deal.
Yeah. Huge deal, yeah. But Tenryu and his 15 guys actually leaving All Japan was like very new to Baba. That really happened. Yeah. It was April of 1990 that Tenryu suddenly quits. Okay. Then following month, May 10th, Tenryu forms new company called SWS, Super World Sports. And a lot of guys joined, and they were under the impression that they have big budget. They have big budget, and that you'll be making a lot of money with this company. And from New Japan side, that Naoki Sano and George Takano and a couple other guys joined, and Great Kabuki joined, and Akio Sato from America joined to be the international, liaison booker. And soon enough that they signed a deal with WWF, and all these WWF superstars at the time start coming to SWS. Anyhow, that was the same May, to be exact, 4 days after Tenryu made an announcement that he's forming a new company called SWS. 4 days later, Misawa, then Tiger Mask, he unmasks in the ring. Interesting, huh?
His mask into the crowd. Yeah, that was a big moment. Big turning point.
Yeah. Everything's timing, right? That had to be that day. Yeah, because it's like, wow, it's just like Misawa becoming his own man, and this guy will be very special, new main event guy. Believable, Now Tenryu's gone, right? That's right. It had to be Misawa. As a Tiger Mask? No, as himself, Mitsuharu Misawa. He's ready to do this. Then June, the following month, the very first meeting of Mitsuharu Misawa without mask in green tie, that the new Misawa, right? Up against then still strong Jumbo Tsuruta for the first time. Then Misawa beats Jumbo Tsuruta that night. Then Star is Born. That was really one of the greatest moments in All Japan history.
And I guess right before Misawa would win that match, was the feeling in the air among the fans something along the lines of like Jumbo was that type of guy you wouldn't be surprised if he won because he always won. And
like almost like no emotion.
Yeah, it was almost like if it turned out that Jumbo beat Misawa in the end, I think it would have nothing would have happened. People would have went home. It would have been fine, but it wouldn't have been what it was. Just because that was the feeling, I think, right? The feeling among fans. He was just kind of...
Then again, everything's timing. That had to be that night that Tenryu's gone. And All Japan lost, 10, 15 guys, and they brought in 15 new American guys to fill the card, And that was the time all these, the Johnnyest, the Dan Crawford, the Steve Williams, the Doug Furness, all these new regular All Japan American wrestler being brought in, and wow, this is an entirely new crew. Like a new era has begun instead of like being worried about not being able to make it. That wow, it's like a brand new All Japan Pro Wrestling, and Jumbo's still strong. Stan Hansen's still strong, and Terry Goldie, all these guys are still here, and what you need is a brand new superstar, and Misawa was a guy, and yeah, he was ready to do this, and Misawa beat Jumbo for the first time and pinned 1, 2, 3. Then Kobashi and Kawada come in the ring and picked up Misawa and put him up on their shoulder, like a real dramatic ending. Yeah. So it's like, wow, that for that moment, everybody I think forgot about Tenryu's new company. Yeah.
Again, that's the Baba's tactic, I guess, is when somebody offers up a big story, a big angle, a big happening, Baba's gonna probably outdo it. It seems like, and it's not always just the strategy; it's the timing, like you said.
Yeah, but knowing timing is experience.
That's true too. He knew when to pull the trigger.
Yeah, and sure enough, 2 years later, 1992, this Tenryu's SWS went down quick.
Right. It went away.
And 99, yeah, it was a big firework or something, and only lasted 2 years or so, and they went down really. It takes a while for Giant Baba to do things, right? And it took 2 more years for Misawa, 1992 to be exact. It took 2 years for even for Misawa to win the Triple Crown for the first time. Yeah, another 2 years, 1992, summer, August. Misawa, being on top for 2 years. Misawa beats Stan Hansen for the first time in single match situation, the Triple Crown title match. He beats Stan Hansen and becomes Triple Crown champion for the first time 2 years later. And that was also the year the tag team of Misawa and Kawada won the tag team tournament in December for the first time. Yeah. But 92, we have to remember, this 92, the Misawa becoming, Triple Crown champion for the first time and winning, December's tag team tournament and all these. But 92 was also the year Jumbo Tsuruta got sick and sidelined. And he was never the same after that.
That's right. He wasn't a main eventer after that.
No, the November of 92, Jumbo, announced that he's not competing into this year's, the tag team tournament. Oh, okay. Then he actually spent next 7 months in hospital, and they did well. Wrestling magazine and the Tokyo Sports and even our magazine, we could pro that we didn't really interview the doctors. It was like going over Giant Baba and Mrs. Baba's over their head to do interviewing actual doctors, right? So whenever and whatever they were like a make announcement, like an official announcement from wrestling company, that was a story wrestling magazine wrote. But actual doctors and hospitals and nurses were not interviewed. So we did not really know Jumbo's condition. It was said hepatitis B or hepatitis C or the complication of this and that. But the only time we share anything was like official news release from the company. You know what I'm saying?
How else did that affect how you reported it?
Well, because you have to, like almost think that if company is not talking about his real condition, that they don't want you to know. You know what I'm saying? And if it's a scandal magazine, like you're a movie stars or entertainer or a baseball player, I think the reporters go ahead and go interview doctors in the hospitals and the actual nurses that were there.
Sure.
And get the real story. But in wrestling community, I guess, so professionally trained to kayfabe the world.
It's
in a way.
Very unique.
Yeah. So I didn't think about it at the time, and how sick Jumbo really was. But somebody like that, and this big elite athlete, sidelined for 7 months, and sometimes he's like, You're sick, but you're gonna be in hospital just 1 month or so and go home and rest, right?"
And especially someone like Jumbo, he's Jumbo, he's a
Athlete.
big athlete. You don't expect
Yeah.
him to just
Spent
dip out
next,
for 7 months.
he wouldn't get out of hospital until June of '93.
Hmm.
He was in hospital actually for 7 months. What was he doing, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we all felt that he's sicker than we were led to believe.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. But company never made, big announcement, of his condition. But he did come back the October of that year, as a wrestler, a little skinnier, but that it was at the Budokan, but not a main event, of course not. Baba and Jumbo and Russia Kimura as a trio went a bit, had a 6-man tag team situation against Masafuchi and Haruka Eigen and Jun Izumida, clearly before the intermission, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the Jumbo made a comeback, so there was a happy, time. But the Baba, Jumbo, and Russia Kimura, like a senior trio, right?
Right.
6-man tag team situation.
It's more of an appearance than a match.
Yeah, they wouldn't do much. That the Baba comes in, does his chopping kicks. Russia Kimura come in, do his stuff, and Jumbo comes in, say "oh" and does clothesline. That's about it, right?
Yeah, everyone cheers.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy. It's good fan service.
Oh, of course. Oh, good to have him back. But he was never back into the main event picture after that. Yeah. But just timing and is so interesting that just as soon as Misawa, Kawada, and Kobashi and Taue, they call it pillars now, right? 4 Top Gun were ready to become big, huge superstar of 90s. Jumbo happened to, just so happened that the Jumbo was ready to retire, realistically. Yeah. Timing is interesting, huh?
It really, I mean, do you think All Japan would have looked the same if Jumbo had stayed in that position for a few more years into maybe 1990?
But then again, probably Misawa Jumbo program would have been longer one. Much like, Jumbo against Tenryu, and Tenryu, able to Jumbo, right? And then become equal, But I think if Jumbo was well and healthy, it took Misawa a little longer to beat him. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. Because when Misawa was Tiger Mask, this Misawa version of Tiger Mask was tag team partner of Jumbo Tsuruta, clearly below,
Number 2.
like a 3, Yeah, yeah. So it's like in hindsight, timing is like a scary thing. But all in all, Jumbo came back as an active wrestler, but was never the same after '93. Yeah, yeah.
And also
So
by
that
that
was like
time, that's when the younger guys like Misawa, Kobashi, Toshiaki
Kawada. Yeah,
Akira Taue,
yeah,
Akiyama, a little later
yeah.
on.
Akiyama, like a rookie Akiyama, as number 5. Yeah, and Stan Hansen was still there. The whole purpose was that Misawa, Kawada, Kobashi, and Taue will they eventually beat Stan Hansen in single match situation. Stan's still standing there. Like Stan was always saying that, that Japanese against Japanese in the main event, fine, but that doesn't really deviate the real social structures out there.
Right.
Like in Japanese corporate company structure, you work so hard, work every day until late at night, and you even come in over the weekend, to work, to, to climb your ladder within a company structure or something like a corporate world, right? And if Japanese wrestler and Japanese wrestler, worked against each other in main event, and if it's a forever fix, that it doesn't deviate from what's happening in the real world. What you need in professional wrestling is badass American. What he's, Stan Hansen says, the badass big American gaijin that they cannot do anything about physically.
Hmm.
It's not logic. Stan Hansen will be standing there, I'll beat you, beat your ass. You cannot do anything about it. That's wrestling. That makes sense.
And it was believable, it was especially believable at that point because, not just because of who he was, not just because of the style, but also because he was kind of that last gatekeeper
cowboy.
of that, the last cowboy
Yeah.
of that era, pre-Heisei era, All Japan,
Yeah,
Jumbo, Tenryu, Baba.
Yeah, right. The one by one they stepped down.
Sure, and he was
Yeah.
kind of the last one that could still compete with the faster, younger guys.
Yeah, and
at a-
physical.
He was usually the more physical in a lot of those early 90s matches. It's amazing.
Oh yeah,
the guy,
that they're just like a big, huge, badass American that they cannot do anything about physically. Of course, Misawa, Kawada, they'll do their style in the ring. They'll kick you in the face. But at the end of the day, do you remember the way Stan Hansen was clotheslining like Kawada? It's
yeah,
on videotape.
yeah. Or
Yeah.
I think it was maybe the 1992 match where towards the end of the match he had with Kobashi, he used a lariat while he was on the top rope and just knocked him right off the top rope, and that was pretty much it. Just,
I mean, there is no more believable wrestling than that, right?
It
Yeah.
came out of nowhere, and it was believable, especially when you know that he's blind without his glasses.
Yeah, they're extremely nearsighted.
Mm.
Yeah. But
It really came through in that match.
and it's not amazing in professional wrestling. Promo and mic work is so important, but never once Stan did promo or backstage skit or the long interview, to establish his storyline. He just come in and just swing his cowbell and go into the ring and take his cowboy boots and leather vest, cowboy attire off, and up he goes and just does football tackle, just knock people off. That on the apron, this like heavy looking double knee drop he does, and a big like a fat elbow drop he does, and he signals audience that with his left arm up when he fixes that elbow pad. Here comes his lariat, and he finished the match. And also, he's so old fashioned that he does not allow his finish to get kicked out at the count of two.
Hmm.
If it's not to finish the match, he doesn't even use it.
Hmm.
I mean, something can be learned from that, even today. You don't, want let guy kick out from your rainmaker or something, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Protecting
Stan-
your signature moves.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And Stan Hansen was more Baba student than anybody for that matter. Yeah. So Tenryu quit, and Jumbo got sick, and Misawa and his group of the whole new generation of superstar elevated to be the superstar of all Japan, and Stan Hansen was still there, standing strong, which was very good though. And by having Stan Hansen, if you remember, end of the year tag teams, real world tag team tournament, Stan Hansen, initially had, Bruiser Brody as his partner in the early 80s. He went to New Japan, then came back, but he was never the tag team partner again. Stan Hansen and Terry Gordy as a partner, Stan Hansen and Danny Spivey, Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace, Stan Hansen and Gary Albright, and Stan. Oh, there was a Tenryu and Stan, and there was a tag team of Stan Hansen and Kawada, if you remember,
Mm-hmm.
1 year. And at the end of 90s, Stan Hansen took up Vader as his official partner and participated in the very end of the century, 1999 tag team tournament. Vader, Stan Hansen against Kobashi and Akiyama, and it was a night Kobashi pinned Stan Hansen with his right arm lariat.
Huge one.
Yeah, the reason I'm talking about was that 1998. I said 1998, December 5th, Budokan was Giant Baba's very final wrestling match in his life. Baba Russia Kimura and Mitsuo Momota, and against Masafuchi and Kikuchi and Eigen Haruka. Of course, his spot that is designated 6-man tag team situation, but the Baba worked that night, and that was his final match of life. And what's interesting is though, 1998 was the year both Antonio Inoki and Jan Baba had their final match. April 4th of 1998, Inoki had his big, huge retirement, big spectacular at the Tokyo Dome. He had a match against Don Fry, a match against Sting, match against Gerald Gordo, that Dutch karate guy. But so he did the American wrestling, he did the MMA, and he did this and that. And Inoki finished his 38 career in April of 1998. Interesting enough that 1998, 6 months later, was the year Giant Baba also had his final match. So they both started 1960, September of 1960, same day debut. And Inoki and Baba both had 38 career, all the way to 98, and both had their final match that year. This is a destiny or fate, or you know what I'm saying?
I mean, I don't know what other words to use because they're so tied together I don't know if it's just chance, if it's supposed to be that way, but it's also interesting to think about Inoki after Baba had passed away, because 20 or probably more years after
Baba passing,
away,
Inoki's not active,
too.
Right, because Inoki was never active, active wrestler again, but he never left the public eyes.
That's right, yeah, and he had influence.
He was part, he was part of the Pride, Inoki Bomaye, that the MMA, that he ran the public office one more time, that he was in movies, he was this, that. Right, Antonio Inoki kept being Antonio Inoki for the next 2 decades, and this January of 1999, Baba passed away at the age of 61. Yeah. 98 was also the year that the All Japan solo, for the first time they held the Tokyo Dome show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because see, way back in '89, when Tokyo Dome opened, New Japan was the first one to be holding the big, huge spectacular at the Tokyo Dome, right? And Baba was not interested in that. And Baba said, "It's Tokyo Dome is too big for wrestling. I mean, people is watching wrestling from that far away. Ah, no. He'd better, he'd much rather run 5 Budokan shows instead." But somehow, in 1998 May, that Giant Baba decided to have his first All Japan Tokyo Dome show. Yeah. And I guess something, must have changed, because that was around the time he brought Hayabusa in, he brought Shinzaki in, he brought, Yoshihiro Takayama in, and bringing, or the Hiroshi Hase joined All Japan and all these things. And he really opened the door to a lot of new things at the time in his final year. But the Baba passed away January of 1999, and that year, May 2nd, they held Tokyo Dome show for Baba's retirement show without Baba, but they put Baba's ring boots in the middle of the ring with Mrs. Baba and the Destroyer Dick Beyer, Gene Kiniski, his rival. All these people came in. He did the retirement ceremony at the Tokyo Dome. The regular show, of course, but mainly it was Tokyo Dome show, but the Baba's retirement ceremony at Tokyo. And that was the time that Jumbo Tsuruta decided to retire altogether. So it's like Baba and Jumbo left altogether.
End of an era.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
And Stan Hansen
1 year
retired soon after, too.
Yeah, 2000? Yeah, right. Because that was the time, right? Stan Hansen had been thinking about it for quite some time, but not to interfere Baba's ceremony or any Jumbo's ceremony. That they would be there another year or so, and the year 2000 comes. That was the time Stan Hansen put his hat Yeah.
So that time 22 years ago, it really felt like the boundary line or like a marker for
End of 20th century, and they all left before 21st century, huh?
and it really felt like it didn't feel like All Japan was dead, but it felt like that version of All Japan could never come back.
Yeah, like a Star Wars movie or
Something like that. Yeah, the end of the
Yeah.
trilogy or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And still had the same character after, but Baba's, gone, and Jumbo died the following year. 2000,
Right.
May of 2000. Yeah, at the age of 47. So, I mean, retiring is one thing, but being actually gone. Baba's gone, Jumbo's gone. And now that, fast forward about 9 years, that the Misawa is gone, right?
Yeah. That's right.
When you think about the 50-year history of All Japan Pro Wrestling, they didn't have all that many real main events. Start Giant Baba, right?
Mhm.
Jumbo and Tenryu, then Misawa. Baba's gone, Jumbo's gone, Misawa's gone. Mrs. Baba's gone. The senior referee Joe Higuchi gone. Russia Kimura. A lot of people are
And
no longer with us.
would kind of disappear early for a little bit too.
Oh, because well documented, but he actually had cancer and had a major surgery. It was a miracle that he made come back.
But
it was
it
never
was
the
at-
same again, though.
Never the same, but it was at the same time around this whole period where, like you're saying, who's around, who's left.
Yeah. But the Baba's people went to heaven. Okay. They were here but left early, kind of thing.
Hmm.
See, Anthony Inoki, Tatsumi Fujinami, Riki Choshu, Akira Maeda, everybody, they retired, but they're still around, which is good.
Some are still wrestling.
Oh, Fujinami, Fujiwara. Yeah, for that matter. Yeah, but Baba's people, for some reason, all these too, the Dick Bayer Destroyer, Bruno Sammartino, yeah. So it's like, wow, they went up to heaven or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It was, and I want to ask from your perspective, when Baba passed away, it wasn't just within the wrestling community. Baba had a
It was all over.
cultural influence in Japan
regular
too.
television and news. Real evening news and regular newspapers and the weekly magazines. They all covered the story. They all covered the story like the hero from Showa era.
Mm-hmm.
And when black and white TV became color TV, Giant Baba was a star. And also, he was in more TV commercial than let's say Inoki, or more of a caliber of your Babe Ruth like baseball player type of superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Household name.
Yeah, and never had a bad story in media, like a gossip magazines, like some of the sometimes your Hollywood celebrity or sports celebrity type have what the real estate scam or this
Have an
and that.
affair.
They'll pop up, right? For Baba, he never once had dirty story stuff. Never once.
No, he was always
That's
very
hard, huh?
very dignified, like a king almost.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and distant.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was hard to do interview. Well, but Mrs. Baba was so protective, that he just, with all the, like an interview application and all these things, Mrs. Baba was the one reading through everything, every little, that the letters and emails, not so much then, but all the applications for interviews or the phone calls that she listened to it, and she was the one, that keeping the gate. Yeah. Yeah. And also it's so rare in within wrestling business that he there were even one rumor about this, mafia yakuza involvement in professional the selling shows or all these things that everything was so kept under control with Baba. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, it felt like you could bring your family to it and wouldn't feel as like
Dirty something.
yes,
Yeah.
not sleazy, but not as dangerous maybe.
Yeah, but Baba was the first one to know that about this stigma in wrestling business. It's not as high class as your like a Major League Baseball,
Sure.
or take me out to ball games, or go to wholesome family movie, Disney movie. It's wrestling, but wrestling isn't all that bad. It was just about where he stood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the way he presented it was in line with how, in general, Sam Muchnick's NWA wanted it, in theory, to be presented as a wholesome, family, what would become television from the 80s and on.
Yeah,
70s, 80s on.
And also, wrestling is something that they always been around. They take your grandpa and grandma will take you to your first wrestling match.
Sure.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So that the Baba inherited that legacy part of that wrestling business. Yeah. And it was interesting that he was so NWA, but he was the first one to leave this, like AWA myth.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, what do you call it? Not believing it anymore, and disillusioned, I guess.
Yeah.
Is a word. Yeah.
Disillusioned.
And then he created Triple Crown instead, because this, means a lot more to Japanese wrestling fans and wrestling community. These are the actual belts been used for decades and decades, physical belts, that we still have that. And that's as big as or more as just as important than any world heavyweight championship in the world or in wrestling history. And actually, when you think about it, that's really true. Yeah. And they were using this 3 different physical championship belt up until 5-6 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, until now it's
triple
in one belt.
Now it's right, one belt. But the name Triple Crown in All Japan Pro Wrestling, and I think Kento Miyahara today is very good champion. Yeah.
I think he'll be around for a long while. And I also think that a lot of the new roster has a lot of, I guess you could call them Baba type guys. Like
like a Shuji Ishikawa.
Exactly.
Suwama.
Yeah. Suwama.
Oh yeah, they were more like a Baba and Jumbo style. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think also the Wrestle One, the guys they inherited from that, like Koji Doi and Kumarashi.
Oh, sure. And Jake Lee.
Lee, another big, tall guy.
Cool guy. Yeah.
So they have, they're definitely a heavy promotion, if you like modern heavyweight wrestling, which is in a lot of ways what All Japan has always tried to sort of.
None of them have fancy multicolored costume like New Japan guys do.
Yeah, maybe like Kento Miyahara, maybe those guys, the young guys do.
Yeah, but not many. Not many.
Not many.
They all have short trunks.
It's pretty, not conservative, but nothing too flashy.
Conservative is fine. Yeah. And doing, no frill, believable professional wrestling today.
Mixed in with some comedy, early opener kind of
right.
matches.
Oh yeah. It's because we talk about that a lot. That the wrestling fans and audience will be sitting in the same spot the entire night. We'll be seated to certain seat, and you'll be sitting there all day, right? All night. The first match should be presented like a first match, and the second match situation, and rookie situation, and the veteran situation, and the small guy, and the fat guy situation, and somewhat comedy 6-man tag team situation. Then the match, progresses, then the serious one comes up, Yeah. So that's like what Terry Funk would say, enjoy the good night of wrestling. Yeah. So that's still there.
Variety, yeah, and it is still there, yeah. There's a variety, eclectic kind of mix of silly
Yeah.
wrestling or maybe more American style wrestling, especially with Tajiri.
And wrestling is so interesting that when you don't have intermission, you never do this in movies, but in wrestling, you stand up in the middle of the card, in the middle of the match, go to concession and buy yourself another cup of soda and hot dog and come back in the middle of the match.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Or maybe
I mean,
buy merchandise from the wrestlers.
and come back in the middle of some match.
Mm-hmm.
Or
With your new towel.
or during the match, you can talk to somebody sitting next to you, if it's not too loud, In the movie, you go shh, shh, shh.
Sure.
You're not supposed to be talking, But in wrestling, you make friends, I mean,
Yeah, it's
you'd be
social.
talking to you'd be talking to total stranger who's sitting right next to him. He's like, hey, that must hurt, something like that, right?
Because, especially if it's good. If wrestling is really good, you always immediately want to have somebody to talk to about it. You want to
Yeah,
express
they share it, right?
Yeah, you're like, wow, did you see
Yeah.
that? Do you understand? Did I see the same thing you did? And I think
Yeah.
that's really
You're
important.
feeling what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
That is so important. That's
And
so important in
to see
wrestling.
if it's matching, because sometimes it is, and sometimes it's totally not. Sometimes it's
Or
interesting
because
what connects and
you
what
might
doesn't.
miss something, or this guy right next to you might have missed.
Sure,
So,
yeah, it depends on your perspective or where you were sitting or what you were doing.
Right, but if it's Misawa, if it's Kobashi, if it's Stan Hansen, what you're seeing, you want to share it with with somebody right away.
Hmm.
Wow, that's a good one.
Especially those big moments, like we talked about earlier, Misawa beating Jumbo.
Or Stan Hansen clotheslining somebody for the night.
Yeah, knocking them out.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
gotta be it.
And I wanted to quickly talk about when we listen to All Japan, or when we see clips on YouTube or whatever, we often hear the Nippon TV sports theme or athletic theme, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yes, and I mean, of course, that's associated with Baba and All Japan, but I think people should also realize that a lot of people in Japan know that tune just from, it's kind of the sports day theme song, at school.
Yeah, Channel 4 song.
The Channel 4
like
song.
Marathon or Olympic or ski jump and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, you don't hear it in just wrestling, although we hear it a lot with All Japan, but
Right.
It's like a jingle that you hear in lots and lots of sports TV.
Yeah, right.
And,
because it's a giant, baseball team Giants theme too. Not
Sure.
the theme, but the Channel 4 when that come out. Yeah.
Which is also, it's kind of funny because Giant Baba was one of the Giants and went on to represent both. So,
Right.
So that I think that has a deeper connection with him than other objects that it kind of is background music for all throughout different aspects of life.
Now it's been 23 years since his Giant Baba's passing. 23 years, yeah. And I think today's wrestling fans haven't seen his, or obviously haven't seen, his important matches or know the name but never really seen his matches even on YouTube, So I think it's our role, at least, to talk about Giant Baba like this and pass his legacy down as an understanding of it.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't just him
not
as
just
a wrestler.
Right, the promoter, and that really made one of the people who made wrestling what it is today.
Shaped it.
Yeah.
He really did.
Very influential. Not just Rikidozan, but of course both Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki, but in conservative way and in the believable way, Giant Baba did that for wrestling business away from Antonio Inoki, but the Antonio Inoki did that for Antonio Inoki most of the time, right? But I think Giant Baba was there that the All Japan, Pro Wrestler, Giant Baba, all in one as the same, as it is. And he stepped down from main event position early enough, but never retired. Yeah. So that was different approach.
And it's still an approach a lot of different promotions model themselves after. It's still looked at, it's still kind of the norm. It's a standard within culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess that's it for Giant Baba series. And we have how many episodes?
We have 4 episodes, and today's episode covers 23 years past Baba's passing. So it shows how influential he is.
Yes. All right. Well, do a legacy, series with someone else. But I think soon or next episode we have to talk about women's wrestling in Japan now. Huh? Now that the women's wrestling, especially Stardom, is so popular worldwide right now. But when you talk about women's wrestling, yeah, WWE has a women's division that are pretty big, and every company in America have women's divisions. And Joshi Pro Wrestling, women's wrestling in Japan, they're also it's almost like another culture, and how Joshi, how this Japanese women's pro wrestling has developed and evolved in its history and style and type of star they produced. We should cover this, like slowly, but like in length.
Yeah, and we can use events like Dream Slam as talking points too, because there's lots to talk about from that era, that time, and like you said,
Tokyo Dome.
At Tokyo Dome, yeah, I think that's one of the most famous. But it's also not
but
scratching the surface on Joshi history.
Joshi history. Oh, it goes all the way back to like 1947, 1951. Seriously, and Mildred Bark. Mildred Bark planted the seed in women's wrestling because Ricky Dozan resented women's wrestling. There was like women's matches were never part of men's show. Much like like a Fabulous Moolah had one match in men's show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore you never needed that many women's wrestlers. But women's wrestling in Japan, Joshi wrestling in Japan, always have been that separate from men's wrestling group. They always had the women's group and women's wrestlers and women's show separate from men's wrestling, and had a completely different kind of evolution and star system and its history. It's a different saga, I think. And we could talk about it forever, though. Actually.
Yeah, and it's also, it's almost viewed as not just as a genre of wrestling, but a genre of entertainment itself, especially
of course
with the combination of music.
Yeah, Maha Fumiake to Beauty Pair. Yeah, before Crash Girls and all, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Idol culture is a big part of it.
Sure, and Japanese kawaii pop idols. Yeah, that had that. Yeah, of course.
We didn't get that the men's side. We had the Terry Funk album and everything, but I don't think it was quite the same. So, yeah. So we'll start talking about that next time.
Of course. Okay. I hope that still we can take questions on Baba and we'll answer that next time. But I think this was our final episode of Giant Baba history.
Yeah, if there's anything that we missed out on or didn't cover or you had questions about,
the thing people wanted to ask questions, we'll still be answering.
Because there is a lot more out there, and especially after Baba passed away in the beginning of Pro Wrestling Noah. That's an entire. That's a.
Oh God, that's you can write a book about it, and there's a book written about it. So yeah,
but a lot of the same characters. So just keep following along and listening. We'll get there eventually. But how can people reach you, Fumi, on social media?
On Twitter, Fumihiko Dayo, FUMIHIKODAYO. Fumihiko Dayo on Twitter, or Fumisairo on Twitter, Facebook. Actually, I'm on Instagram, but I don't post a lot of things on there. Usually I'm on Facebook a lot. Okay? So send me requests to be friends with notes.
And I'm at Justin M. Knipper, KNIPPER on Twitter. That's it for the Giant Baba series, part 4. That's it. So we'll come at you next week with lots of Joshi Pro history, new series. That's right. So Fumi, take it away for now.
So long from Tokyo.